Hello, and welcome to Talk 8 of the Instagram and Facebook Ads Virtual Summit, brought to you by Mobile Monkey. And that is Larry Kim's How to Grow Your Instagram and Facebook Ads Agency. But just before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please click on the Upgrade to Access Everything button below this video. You will certainly be very happy for doing so, because you will have access to all the summit recordings, all the previous summit recordings, and your 50% off discount coupon for the first month of your next Mobile Monkey plan upgrade. So really worthwhile doing. Make sure you have access to all these videos over the coming few months. We've had such incredible interaction here. This is our last keynote from Larry Kim. Now, as previous discussions, I'm sure that there's going to be an incredible number of questions. Make sure you get your questions in as early as possible. So as Larry's sharing, make sure if questions come to mind, you ask them in the chat, you ask them in the Ask a Question section. We'll save the best ones. The best ones will be upvoted, and we'll get them answered at the end of the presentation. So yeah, final speaker, Mr. Larry Kim, CEO of Mobile Monkey, started a digital agency a decade ago, growing it to over 300 employees, tens of thousands of customers, and managing over $1 billion of ad spend. Now, last year, that particular company sold for $150 million. And in this session, he'll summarize the top takeaways for performance optimization agencies, juggling multiple channels, diving deep into the intricacies of the fast-moving Instagram and Facebook ads ecosystem. So here he is. Take it away. Welcome, Larry Kim.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. And it's great to be here. Just gonna.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. So if you share your screen whenever you're ready, we'll look forward to seeing the presentation. Lovely. So we see the screen perfectly in front of us. So I've focused the screen, and it's over to you, sir. So if you just click on the hide button just at the bottom of the presentation, perfect. Over to you.
Awesome. So we're talking about how to grow your Instagram and Facebook ads agency. Here's the thing. Most of the agency growth stuff that you read out there is a bunch of crap. It's all these kind of stupid cliches like be your own boss and work from home and do more what you love and retire by 35. And it's not totally impossible, but it's just like, the reality is most of that junk is just written by sole proprietors with like one or two clients. And, most of the marketing agencies out there, while I don't think it's like a really super complicated type of business, most of them go nowhere. Very few, achieve any significant amount of scale. So it's just basically a sea of donkeys out there in terms of agency land. And so today we're going to talk about how to be a unicorn in a sea of donkeys in terms of how to scale your agency to greater and greater numbers. And before getting all to the hacks, I wanted to introduce myself briefly. I'm Larry Kim. As David was saying, I started WordStream a decade ago in my 20s out of a Panera Bread. It's the world's leading provider of pay-per-click advertising software and services, including 30-40% mixture of services revenue. It was a really exciting venture. My first business, starting from literally nothing to about 55 million in revenues last year, 16 million in earnings, and it was Google's largest ad partner. I sold the business last year for $150 million. And so enough about me. Let's talk about an important question, which is, should you even scale your agency in the first place? And, it's not as, believe it or not, people really struggle with this. So I have a lot of friends who are agency owners, or, they're thinking of starting an agency, but basically, often I'll just ask them, like, how's that agency going? How's your customer count growing? And they'll just give me these lame excuses like, oh, we're a boutique agency. I don't want to be a big agency. We're like, we're just right at the size. And I think that's a load of crap, because if I gave you $1 million client and I just dropped it right on your lap, you would be so happy, wouldn't you? So I think, even if people say they're a boutique agency, they wouldn't mind the growth if they could find it. And so when I hear these kind of defensive comments, I think what they're really saying is my marketing agency is stuck. And this happens to pretty much every agency out there, because agency businesses is very unique in that it's very, very easy to scale, like initially. So revenue grows very quickly in the first few months, the first year or so, but then quickly flatlines. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Say you're able to sign up a new monthly retainer client for $10,000 a month every month. So in the first year of operation, you're adding $120,000 of annual revenue, like for every new client that you add to your roster. Unfortunately, these clients don't stay forever. And so once you get to a year or so, if that's your average customer lifetime, your revenue quickly flatlines to the point where you're not really growing anymore. The new customer that you add every month is merely replacing the one that quit on you. And so um, that's kind of the scenario, like why everyone gets stuck in these growth traps. It's just agency business. It scales very quickly initially and then quickly flatlines. But if you were so interested in doing this, I would argue that there's a huge benefit to scaling your agency and not be complacent in where you are at. You can make a lot of money. You can create a business empire. You can become internet famous and speak at fancy conferences and make millions of dollars. That's kind of cool. For other people who are, it's not just about money. It's also about sort of a personal challenge to see if, what could be done and how fast can it be done in terms of like a personal achievement. And also I think that marketing agencies, we provide really valuable services to other businesses, and also hire a lot of people. Like we create a lot of job employment, and so this is also a virtuous goal, like that has nothing to do with money. And so just getting that out of the way, today I grant you permission to grow your agency. Don't worry about all the hangups. I promise you it'll be great. With this out of the way, let's talk about my top 5 agency growth hacks of all time. When I define a hack as being something, I'm not gonna like tell you to like work really hard. Like that's stupid obvious. Obviously, you have to work hard. But like along the journey of creating my last big business, there were a couple non-obvious findings that were kind of very leveraged. They weren't illegal, and it had a lot of impact for not a lot of work. And so I'm just trying to see if I can show you a couple shortcuts or a couple ideas that you could copy for your own agency. So my number 5 agency growth hack is to be a little bit delusional. You see, I have found that really great and amazing things happen when you're intentionally delusionally projecting, some grand thoughts. I'm not talking about like Fire Festival or Theranos, but those are a little too delusional. But like, nevertheless, it's still important. Like they had sort of the right idea of projecting a bold vision, because what happens is, really great things can happen. And just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, this is the actual real business plan that I pitched to investors in 2009. It was pretty hilarious, starting with literally nothing and then growing to tens of millions of dollars in revenues in just a few years. Just to give you a sense of how hilarious this was. Well, it was in 2009, so we were in the middle of a global economic recession. I had no prior startup experience, no customers, no revenue, no team. It was just myself, kind of a one-man show. Yet the plan actually worked. That we actually created significantly more revenue than this plan ever called for. And so, the question is, how did this work? How on earth were we able to turn this kind of hilarious plan into a reality? And it gets back to what I was talking about. It really helps to be a little bit delusional in projecting where it is you're hoping to go. This is, of course, one of the things that happens is you get the benefit of the unicorn filter effect. And the unicorn filter effect means if I show you that business plan, 99% of you will look at it and say, like, this is crazy. I think this is not achievable, and that's fine, because what you're doing is you're weeding out sort of the people who are kind of opting out of this journey, like, because it's too ambitious. But 1% of people will actually, be really excited about this. They are, they're unintimidated by these lofty goals, and those are the only types of people, investors, partners, employees, that can ever make this journey possible. And so, the people who join you along your journey are going to be directly correlated to the degree of kind of the vision that you project. I just didn't really mention this in the intro, but as you know, I started a new company called Mobile Monkey. It's the world's fastest growing Facebook Messenger marketing platform. And do you want to see the delusional business plan for this business? I didn't spend that much time working on it. I just dusted out the old business plan from WordStream, kind of changed the dates a little bit, and so that it's like 2000, made it current, and then I just changed the revenue numbers so that it was kind of twice the revenue, in half the time. So that's actually one of my big regrets with WordStream, that maybe I wasn't delusional enough, that that we actually exceeded those revenue goals, and some of the bit of me is wondering what would have happened if we aimed even higher. So number 4, our marketing agency growth hack is to kind of deploy the customer churn detectors, and the churn busters. All right, so what does this mean? Basically, clients don't stay forever. The average marketing service client these days lasts for less than 13 months. So if you're keeping these customers for 6 months, that's a disaster, because it takes time to onboard these customers. It takes time and effort to sell the business, and if they quit right away, you've kind of lost money here, because it's more effort than it was worth. If you're keeping customers 6 to 12 months, you're still a donkey. If you can keep companies as customers for 12 to 18 months, well, you're starting to see decent profitability. 18 or more months, then that's golden. And so you really need to keep an eye on these metrics, because we're talking the difference between like a 7-month customer versus like a 16-month customer. Like the latter is it's more than 2 times more profitable. It's like 5 times more profitable, because all the costs are incurred in acquiring and servicing the customer initially. And so thankfully, it can be a little hard to figure out, how the churn is happening and why people churn. But thankfully, I had tens of thousands of customers, and so we were able to run a lot of data analysis on who is churning and why. And I'd like to share with you some of the big insights that we had in terms of services, businesses, like why do customers churn. So number 1. Donkey customers choose month to month. Okay, so typically an agency, whether you're an ad agency or an SEO agency or whatever agency, they typically have different prices on their website or in their service contracts. You might offer a month-to-month offering that has a higher price. You might have a 6-month commitment that has a slight discount, and a 12-month kind of package that has an even bigger discount. Do you know what happens when you kind of segment your customer, your pricing in this way? Can anyone guess in the comments here? What do you think is going to happen? What happens is that the month-to-month customers typically churn at 2 times higher than the rest of the other customers. So basically what happens is if a customer chooses kind of the path of least commitment, that's a kind of like a tell. They are either consciously or unconsciously signaling their lack of commitment to this initiative. And so this is a really easy way to filter out the donkey customers. And so what do you do about this? Well, you could eliminate the month-to-month client option. So This could be hard for a lot of agencies that are just getting started because, like, probably more than 50% of your customers want to just go month to month. Here's the thing: I guarantee you'll sell fewer customers if you do this, but I also guarantee that the ones that you do sell, like if you enforce a minimum 6 or 12-month commitment, those will be much better customers, and that they will stay on significantly longer, so they'll be more profitable. My second biggest predictor of churn. Can anyone guess what this is? In terms of which customers are donkeys and unicorns, it has to do with sort of their pre-existing monthly advertising budget, or this rule actually applies to any marketing field. Like, it could be like, how invested they were in content marketing, or how invested they were in social media marketing. So what we noticed was that if you take all the customers that you have and you organize them into 4 quartiles, so 4 buckets of equal size, the bottom, middle, and upper quartiles, in terms of who's spending the most money on advertising, the upper quartile will actually have twice the survival rate, or half the churn of the lower quartile. And so this just says that, like, you know customers who have bigger budgets, they tend to be more bought into that form of marketing, and thus are more committed to the channel, and thus are better customers. And so, what do we do about this? We need to go up market. We need to focus on finding, bigger and better customers by going up market. Obviously, you can't just parachute in and find a Fortune 500 customer like that. But it's more of a gradual kind of a customer upgrading process. So, like, typically your agency, maybe you're churning like 1 or 2 customers every month. You want to just make sure that the new ones that are coming in are at least a little better and bigger than the ones you just lost. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in that quagmire. So, like, as long as the customers that you're firing by them churning, are being replaced by, bigger and better customers, then you'll be on a growth path. The unicorn law of marketing just says that, a very small amount of advertisers, spend all the money. So this is true of Google. This is also true of Facebook. So in Google, for example, there's about 5 million advertisers. 5,000 of them, or less than 0.1% of them, account for half of that, $100 billion of ad revenues. One of them, Priceline, is like 1% of their total revenues, and the remaining 4.9999 million advertisers account for less than half of ad revenues. And so, just all this is saying is that you need to capture a few unicorns, and as soon as you see how great that is, it'll become more obvious to you on why that's so important. My number 3 biggest cause of churn, it has to do with misset customer expectations. So this is where you have a kind of a sales guy who's like really aggressive at selling your services, making all sorts of crazy promises, and then handing over that customer to the customer success team, and they then find themselves in this situation where it's pretty much impossible to service these clients because they've been promised the moon. I actually had a really, really great salesperson who I thought was really, really great. He was selling 13, 14, 15 deals a month, but about 6 months later, we caught on that, like, none of his customers were surviving past 6 months, so one of the key things you need to do as you're scaling, you have to look at the survivability, the churn rates, and the average customer value of your customers based on the rep who sold it. And if you happen to see like one rep, that has like half the lifetime as someone else, it means they're a liar, and they're just making all sorts of crazy claims, and you need to fire that person, which is exactly what we did. You should also create disincentives to sell bad clients. One idea of this is just don't even pay the commission check until like 30 or 60 days into the client engagement, just to ensure that that this isn't a bad fit, that they weren't sold kind of a bill of goods that is totally unrealistic. My 4th biggest predictor of churn is NPS scores, Net Promoter Score, measured at 45, 90 days is pretty typical. So this is just asking your customers, how likely are you to recommend us to your friends or colleagues? If you are getting 9s and 10s, those are promoters, that's great. And if you're getting 0s to 6s, that's terrible, those are detractors. And so the net promoter score is just the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. What's a good NPS? Well, this is a services business here for like marketing. This is not like selling like sexy B2C electronics or something like this, where you get like 80% NPS and stuff like this. Like typically an average, like a pretty good NPS for customer for marketing services would be around 20-30%. So like anything below like negative or 0 to 20%, that's terrible. 20 to 30%, you're pretty good. Anything about better than 30% net promoter score, then you're golden. Just a couple tips here. If someone says that they're likely to refer you to a customer, ask them for that referral, because that referral will convert to a customer with a very, very high likelihood. Alternatively, if you get these scores of 0 to 6, you absolutely need to do an intervention, because that customer is just going to churn any day now. And one of the interventions that we came up with was this sort of this we've upgraded your account to our more senior rep. They're disappointed. It doesn't even have to be your most senior rep, but you just need to make them feel special, and make them feel like things are changing, so that they kind of reset the clock and give you another 3, 4, 5 months of time to kind of prove success or failure. And so it's just do an intervention. Similarly to how I was recommending that you benchmark churn by sales reps, when you scale, you're going to have 30, 40, 50, 100 client service reps. And so you need to be benchmarking the customer satisfaction metrics, as well as the net promoter scores, not just across the company, but segmented by the individual sales rep, or sorry, the individual customer service rep. And in order to kind of incentivize, great service, you should be, having 10-15% of that CS reps compensation package be tied to kind of tangible performance numbers in terms of the customer service rankings. In terms of, here's an interesting factoid when it comes to client retention. We ask questions like, how satisfied are you with the results? How satisfied are you with the customer success relationship? Which, in the comments here, can anyone guess which of these two metrics, like love for the client service representative or amazing client results, was more closely tied to stronger retention? Can anyone guess? I'll just give you a second to type out your guesses. Okay, so the answer is customer happiness with their CS rep was slightly more correlated than the actual performance. So like we spent all this time, basically every presentation today was all about how to improve the ad performance. But in reality, it's like, it has more to do with the personal connection, slightly more. Like you can't be like, pissing away money in their accounts, and that won't end well. But like, all things considered equal, if you have a really, positive relationship with your CS rep, you're more likely to give them a benefit of doubt when things are kind of going sideways, and more likely to trust kind of the process, in terms of how to get out of the mess. And so one other churn busting tip that I have for you today is simply to hire more salespeople. Why? It's because the way that churn is defined, it has to do with how much monthly recurring revenue contracts did you lose last month divided by how much monthly recurring revenue you have this month. Okay, so if the rate of bringing in new revenue is static, well, then you're gonna just flatline, right? Because that was what I was showing you initially. But like, if every month or every quarter or every week you're adding new salespeople, then you're accelerating the rate of revenue growth, which therefore functionally decreases your customer churn rate. So that's kind of an interesting hack. That's why like companies like HubSpot have thousands of salespeople, and companies like WordStream have like almost 100 salespeople, because you want to keep accelerating the rate of revenue growth. So second last churn busting tip I have here is to upsell adjacent marketing services. So I think it's absolutely imperative that you, if you have the customer already and you've already learned their business, that you should be expanding into those relationships by taking over other marketing channels, such as messaging, such as pay-per-click advertising, such as SEO. If you're only doing one thing, you might think that's a clever idea, but it's far easier to upsell existing customers additional services than it is to find new businesses. And the interesting thing about this is that it just makes it harder for them to churn. So because you're taking over so many different parts of their business, and so today's summit, it was sponsored by Wishpond, and they're a great company for like landing pages and pop-ups and contests, and WordStream is also a great company for Google AdWords and Facebook advertising, and SEMrush that does SEO. Like these are all really fantastic products that you can if you can productize a service off of just operating these products, I think this is a really valuable way to generate more revenue and also keep your existing customers significantly longer. Basically, they're giving you the benefit of doubt to start this new project, and they're not gonna kill the project like after a week. They're gonna give it 3, 4, 5 months to play out. And so you should look at your customers as a journey of like bringing them in through one channel, and then every 6 months like turning on another channel, so that these relationships last for years, not months. In terms of what services to be focusing on, obviously I'm very excited about messenger marketing. Virginia spoke about how there's more people on messaging than social media, and the engagement rates are so much better. That chatbots are a really fantastic kind of a way to land and expand into big accounts. Like this is such an interesting technology, yet only like 1 or 2% of businesses are using it. And so it's much easier to break into a big lucrative account by offering something that they don't already do. You can use the Facebook ad library to figure out if they're using chatbots or not, and if they're not, you can come up with an interesting pitch, showing how you could send messenger ads into these interactive chatbots that you happen to host, such as surveys and reminders and segmentations and drip campaigns. And this is providing like differentiated value for your agency over all the other Facebook agencies that are probably just doing like basic bid manipulation and campaign optimization tasks. And so you could set up messenger-based drip campaigns, in terms of like automated follow-ups, and of course platforms like MobileMonkey make this super easy to do. And then what you do is you just put together some kind of a pricing proposal that comes up with different types of services that you offer, like drip campaigns or Facebook ads, and then just charge them a monthly retainer based on like the different features and functions that they're interested in enabling. Beyond messaging, you kind of want to, if you're an agency, you want to be servicing these like kind of breakout marketing technology channels. You don't want to be starting an infographic agency, because infographics were so popular in 2012, remember. You want to kind of focus on the ones where the golden day is ahead of you and not in the rear view mirror. A couple other channels I would be focusing on include Instagram. Oh my god, like Facebook isn't even growing. Okay, all the growth is happening in messaging and Instagram. And so these are so much more interesting niches to be exploring because you have tailwinds instead of headwinds. Another one is Shopify. If you can kind of make your services kind of more adjacent to e-commerce, I think you'll catch some lucky breaks. My number 3 agency growth hack today has to do with just growth marketing in general. And so, I know you're busy servicing your clients, but you also have to grow your own business. That's the big mistake that the marketers who don't scale make, is that they're not spending enough time and energy on growing their own business and the brand. And so we did a couple of things that really made WordStream a kind of a global brand in the online advertising space. We did a lot of content marketing relating to globally trending news events. So, for example, the Facebook IPO in 2012, we did an infographic because that was kind of the channel that was hot back then. But basically, I just compared the performance of Facebook ads versus Google ads in terms of click-through rates, cost per click, conversion rates, and it generated tens of thousands of press pickups in the media. BBC News, NPR, Fox Business. It was a lot of coverage, and it generated millions of links to the site, which helped make WordStream the business that it is today. I do this pretty often. Like, obviously, if you've been watching news, you've heard of fake news. So when that whole story of fake news started to break out in 2016, 2017, I just created a story on how to create fake news by starting a fake news page and sponsoring a fake news news update, et cetera, just kind of breaking down the process, and these generated millions of views as well. The third kind of crazy growth hack was just building a grader, which was sort of this way of kind of automatically auditing the different accounts and kind of giving them a grade in terms of like how good or how awful the account was being managed. This little tool, it only took me like 3 months to make with 3 people, but it actually generated over 1 million runs. So like people just use this because it's pretty helpful. And so to the extent that you can come up with like one of these, any one of these crazy hacks, like it's not rocket science. We weren't splitting the atom. Like, you could have come up with like a little infographic about how crappy Facebook ads were in 2012. Everyone knew they were awful at that time. They've come a long way. It's just not a lot of time, but it yields a significant outcome. And so if you can find 1 or 2 along the way, that'll help immensely. A lot of marketers, we think that kind of the main way to do this stuff is to spend a lot of time and energy on personal brands, or maybe even hiring a full-time thought leader. I'm kind of like on the fence on this. Like I understand I do 10 or so events per year, but honestly, my first speaking engagement in the industry was in 2013. It was like a SMX West. It was like some kind of a Google conference in 2013, but that was a full 6 years after starting the business. So like I tend to think that this wasn't kind of instrumental in terms of the success or failure of the business in comparison to those other marketing activities. As for what should you do, like should you have like dedicated kind of a guru? Should you hire a guru to go speak at full-time at conferences? I don't know. I think that the conferences, like there's some that are very valuable and some that are, and most that are donkeys. And so I think that you sometimes end up with like some kind of crazy diva who ends up being very attracted to wanting to have that position of a full-time speaker, and it's just they go crazy, and it just doesn't generate tangible business value as the way that other marketing activities can and do. So my second hack for today, and when we're almost done here, has to do with just recruiting. A recruiting hack. Typically, how much should you spend on hiring new people? I spend about 1/3 of the money coming into an agency on kind of administrative staff, marketing, and sales. So that's kind of overhead. I also spend about a third of the money on kind of servicing the customers. So that's the product that you're delivering, the people that you're hiring to do the work. And I like to save about a third of the money to drop to the bottom line to pay for, taxes and profits and that kind of thing. So that's kind of I would call this kind of a well balance. You can be more aggressive or you can be more conservative, but this certainly is a growth oriented budget. And if you think about a company like WordStream that has 300 employees, that's growing at 30%, like it means you kind of have to generate 50 or so employees to every year to accommodate that kind of growth. But the other challenge is that because we often hire these millennials to do the work, which is very typical, the average tenure is not like 5 years. It's closer to 2.6 years. This is totally normal when you hire people right out of college because they don't tend to stay super long. And so you kind of need to hire, for this example, like 100 people, which is like 2 people a week, just to kind of grow the business as well as replace people who leave. And so, it's really difficult to find people who already know how to do like Instagram ads and already know how to do chatbots and stuff like this. So kind of the hack when you're hiring at scale, you really need to put together your own training departments. So you just hire instead of like specific experience using specific ad technology, you just hire for certain aptitudes. And like, you're looking for certain people who are a certain amount of cleverness who you could then hire at a lower cost and then train them to do the work. So that's important for scaling. Along the journey, I guarantee you one of your employees and one of your customers are going to kind of have this crazy idea of eliminating you as the middleman. And, why don't you just work for me directly? Well, that's kind of a, that's kind of a donkey move because it's your customer. You spend all the money to acquire the customer. You spend all the money to train the employee, and if they're kind of eliminating you from the equation, that seems a little dishonorable to me. I mean, you're not saying that they can't work elsewhere. You're just saying, please don't work for the client that you're servicing. And I think that's a totally reasonable request. So you need to codify this into your employment agreements, your client contracts, and and when someone does violate this agreement, and it will happen along the journey, just go after them in a very public way. Like make an example of this because this is like intolerable. It needs to be enforced. Sue them, make them pay, and no one will do it again. All right. The last thing is like you want to make it so that people don't feel like they want to leave in the first place, and so that has to do with creating a amazing culture at work where like people are referring all sorts of great people, and there's just like a really strong culture, and people love. It's like one of the best places to work in town, kind of thing. And I could do an entire presentation on this. Look into the whole culture thing and learn the tricks on how to make people really want to work really hard for you. It's really meaningful, that angle. So for example, WordStream has like a gazillion $1 million office space like in the Prudential Tower in Boston. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, like does it make any sense to spend this kind of money on like 3 times the money on a really decked out high floor office space in Boston? I would have thought that was crazy, but actually it's a real plus. Like it makes people really excited to go there, et cetera, et cetera. So my last hack for today, and it has to do with cold emailing. All right, so I'm not talking about spamming, but I am talking about supplementing some of your traditional inbound marketing efforts with outbound prospecting. The problem with inbound marketing is that you're not really going after those unicorns. You're just going after whatever stuff just happens to fall into your lap. And so before going into the tips and tricks here, I want to just give you an important disclaimer, just as a kind of a safety valve. Like do this from a different domain, so don't necessarily ruin your core domain based on this experiment, but just try a different domain. The first thing you need to do is you need to get a list of emails, obviously. But a lot of people want to know, like, well, how do I get these emails? So there's a couple tips. There's tools like Hunter, where if you know the name of the guy or if you know their company, it'll find their email address so that's kind of interesting. It's not expensive. It's like $20 a month. If you want to go more upscale, there's tools like ZoomInfo or LinkedIn Navigator that will let you type in like a certain firmographics. So that's like job title, type of company, industry, it's revenue size. You can punch in these numbers and it'll find kind of the target audience that meet those criteria. So that's one way to get a list. If you want to be more scrappy, maybe you could like use something like Phantom Buster Group Extractor, which is like maybe you scrape the $1 billion CEO group on Facebook. I don't know if that really exists or not, but just as an example, just you would scrape that, get a list of people, and then match them up with emails, and then bombs away, right? Send out the emails and make money. No. It's not that easy, actually. First of all, it's not going to work. You're going to have deliverability issues if you're just sending out cold emails. Like nothing. I mean, Gmails isn't stupid. They're not gonna show all these emails. So a couple tips here. You need to verify the list, kind of use a list verifier to clean it up. You need to warm up your address, sort of like, sending out a couple emails to your friends and family first, getting them to engage with the emails from this new domain so that Google thinks that it's a real domain. And then another idea is to fly under the radar. So instead of sending like 100 emails all at once, why don't you send out like 10 emails a day or 5 emails a day and just do it more slowly and kind of fly under the radar? And there's tons of software that does that automatically. So one of the problems with cold email is that you're going to have low engagement rates, like compared to your opt-in list. Like the open rates and click rates are going to be like 3 to 5 times lower. But you know what? Everything has to start with something. I swear to God, like, I raised over $20 million in venture money. How did I do that? Cold emailing. You find some investor, you send them a note about why you think we're such a great fit. I send out like 500 of them. That'll get me 100 meetings, and out of the 100 meetings, maybe 2 or 3 will make an offer to invest. That's just how it works. Everything needs to start with something. But that said, the 3 to 5 times lower engagement rates, it would be cool if there was a way to make these emails more engaging, and there are a couple ways to make them more engaging. One is to tie the cold outreach with some external intent signal. So for example, say you're a national commercial real estate brokerage firm, and you're trying to sell office space to growing companies. Instead of just blasting like 5,000 CEOs, do you need office space? Let's have a talk. Like, that's going to have like a 1% open rate or something like that. What you can do is you can find some other clue, like some other data source that tells you like, this is the SEC saying that WordStream just raised $10 million. Okay, so that's an interesting data point. If that happened like today, well, then what you would do is you kind of marry this external data trigger with an outbound email campaign saying, hey, congratulations on that $10 million you raised. Obviously, you're going to need some new office space. We just have a couple exclusive listings. Would you like to take a look? So that's one source of data, like the SEC data. But like basically in general, what you're looking for is like, think of your sales process. What are the things that people do before they buy your products, and try to find a data source on the web that has kind of that information. So for example, Ad Library on Facebook kind of tells you like if people are doing advertising, you can see like when they started, when they stopped. So that would be kind of an interesting way of trying to figure out if people are interested in scaling their ads. There's other different ways of getting data on prospects. Like one of the big ones is like changes in job titles or changes in jobs. Like if the CMO of a big company gets sacked, well, it's kind of like Game of Thrones. It's like when the king dies, it's like all hell breaks loose. Like who's going to be the next hand of the king and all this stuff. Like all these contractor relationships are up for grabs because there's a new sheriff in town. So you just look for the signals, and then instead of sending out like thousands or hundreds of emails, send out 20 emails or 10 emails. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, just make the more targeted and fewer the better. But the point is, you're being proactive in trying to create a reaction rather than just waiting for something to fall into your lap. So this is what I'm calling intent-driven outbound marketing because we are initiating the conversation, but marrying these outreach with some additional external signal of intent. And typically what people do is there's no products that does everything here, but like you kind of just use your brain and cobble together different do-it-yourself tools and APIs to come up with some kind of magic formula for prospecting. All right. So keep in mind, it's a little harder than inbound marketing, because like the bigger the client, the more attempts you need to make to reach them. But trust me, it's worth it. All right, so that's all my growth hacks today. Like, literally, these are my best growth hacks that I could ever think of for how to grow your agency. Based on my lessons of growing WordStream over the last decade. Take a step back and kind of describe, what does it all mean. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on this epic journey from donkey agency land to unicorn agency land, wherein we describe the power of unicorn projection and having a bold, delusional vision for your company. We talked about the causes of customer churn, like how to detect churn and how to kill it, as well as hacks on how to market your business, how to hire, how to expand into adjacent services and accelerate that growth. David, the last thing I'll say is, like, if you're ever thinking of selling your agency, this is kind of a big deal. The value of your agency is going to be relevant. It's not as much related to how much revenues you have. It's related to how fast is it growing. So $1 million agency that's not growing, maybe it's worth like $500,000 or $1 million. $1 million agency that got there in 2-3 years, that could be worth $3 million. So just it's really remarkable, guys. The slides for this deck are available here. Thank you, Mobile Monkey community, for joining us today. David, do we have any questions today?
Yes, we do. That was an absolutely superb presentation. Thank you so much for doing that, Larry. You've got a lot of positive feedback in the comments there, but we've got a few questions there. We've got 7 that are lined up. We could probably squeeze 1 or 2 more in if anyone would like to ask any more questions as well. But the question with the most upvotes so far is, if you had to pick one service and one niche for unicorn clients, what service and what niche would that be?
Well, I think we said there are 3, like, different channels kind of go in and out of favor. Remember infographics in 2012? They were like on every page on Mashable. The ones that I'm very bullish on in 2020 and beyond are messaging, Instagram, and Shopify. So pick one of those. That those all have like significant tailwinds that'll success is hard when you have to, when the odds aren't in your favor. It's just easier to ride the coattails of one of these emerging trends.
We've got Dana Zamonoro saying, any advice in structuring your business so you can deliver results on top of the client liking you?
So what you do there is, as you scale your team, okay, you're going to have all sorts of situations where you lose a client, and you're going to investigate why you lost a client. You're gonna have happy clients, and you'll understand why that customers are happy. It basically has to do with like certain things that happened like in the customer relationship. So it's the tip here is just to kind of make note of like what's causing customers to be happy and what's making them unhappy, and then you come up with a value system that rewards the things that that publicly recognizes the employees that are doing the things that result in great outcomes. So you'd be surprised how little introspection there is on client success. You have to be very thoughtful about like what are the things that these client service reps did that went above and beyond that yielded to this outcome, and reward and recognize those behaviors.
And Aaron is asking, what is the biggest red flag you've experienced when onboarding a new client? What are some red flags that aren't easy to spot?
Well, the biggest one is like unrealistic expectations. Like this is a process, and your salespeople should be saying like, you know, this is going to be a 6 to 12 month process where we learn your stuff. And if that's not aligned with the expectations on the onboarding call, that's a big red flag. Although, to your point, that's more obvious. Like that kind of should reveal itself pretty quickly. In terms of non-obvious ones, gosh. People who have really, really, really great results, like if you're busting your balls to like busting your ass to work on, sorry, to produce insane results, they churn faster. So does that surprise you, David? Like,
No, not at all. No, I just love that you tried to make it polite by changing balls to ass. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, people like they don't fully understand how hard it is to do these things, and if you're, just crapping unicorns like left and right, they don't really understand how valuable that unicorn is, and so it's kind of non-obvious, like to the user's question, like what's a non-obvious insight. A far better approach would be to take a kind of a more measured approach to delivering ROI, wherein the ROI was distributed over time rather than like in 2 weeks.
Great. And Paul Mitty was asking about the differences between Mobile Monkey and other chatbot services out there.
Well, we're the fastest growing chatbot provider in the world, and it's I think the reasons why people use us is related to the very easy to use user interface that's super easy. The quality of the product, it's very stable. It doesn't crash. Like some of these things are pretty unreliable. The advanced features like natural language processing and WordPress integration, as well as like very competitive pricing. So we don't charge based on the number of contacts or anything like this. It's unlimited contacts. So companies that could be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on this stuff end up paying like 10 or $20, and it's so I think it's kind of the combination of that, and we're just getting started. Like the new features and functions are being added every month, and we're very excited about some stuff that we'll have in store soon.
And Clara Reeves is asking any suggestions for someone starting solo from scratch.
Oh, so that's kind of a uh, that's kind of the genesis, the origin story. Typically, one way to do that is if you had an existing job, and you could like just kind of quit that job and ask them if they would take you on as a part-time contractor. Like that's one of the easiest ways to get started, and then you have sort of some revenues coming in, and then you have some free time to go prospecting and do other stuff, because you're not necessarily like in the office every day. That was sort of how I got started. Like I just quit my job and said, like, by the way, do you want to like keep me on a retainer for you end up getting like twice the money for like to be in the office like half the time or something like that. You know what I mean? So just it's the best one. Your first customer is where you kind of break off an existing relationship, and where they feel very very that you are an important contributor, and that they would like to continue that relationship.
Great stuff. Well, I think we can take two more questions. One is probably more of a comment from Heartlifted saying, for Canadians watching, sending unsolicited email is illegal in Canada. Fine is $48,000. I know that in the UK it's a bit different as well. When you actually send email, if it's B2B and if you're reaching out for the first time, I understand that's legal to do that. And there's a bit of a differentiation between B2B and B2C there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Larry, or do you just really focus on the US?
So I understand that there's like everything has to surface somewhere. I'm not advocating to get a million emails and blast like crazy, and I think that those regulators, they have limited ability to police these. Like, I don't think there's been a single prosecution for GDPR like ever. You see what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Like, or maybe there's like one or two. So like
Yeah.
when they go after a company, it's not going to be like Larry or David for sending out like 100 emails. Okay, they're
Yeah.
gonna go after like, I don't know, Reebok or like some big global brand like British
Yeah.
Airways or something like that. So like I think your risk is low. I'm not suggesting that you create a spam industry. I'm just
Hmm.
saying find a really targeted list of people who you care about, match them with the intent signals that we discussed, and then write thoughtful, icebreakers to start a conversation. Otherwise you're there's no you're otherwise just playing the waiting game. You're just waiting for a big client to fall into your lap, and that's not a great growth strategy.
Absolutely. A bit of common sense goes a long way as well. You can't necessarily always follow the letters to the law if it doesn't mean that it's not giving you an opportunity just to have a conversation with someone, and you're not trying to spam people, you're not trying to give them something they wouldn't want, you're actually just trying to have a conversation with someone to begin with. But it's a debate, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think the good news is that there's a lot. There's a joke. It's like, I don't have to be fast enough. I don't have to be fast to outrun this shark. I just have to be faster swimmer than you. Like it, meaning there's kind of this relative thing going on where like all the policing actions. You just don't have to be the worst offender.
Okay, let's have the last question for Jim Bob, saying, do you offer a prorated refund if your customer wants to quit before 12 months?
Let's see. If they are looking to quit before 12 months, then they actually owe you more money. Okay, because if they sign up for the 12-month rate, okay, then they got a kind of a discount on all the months, like month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, without honoring their commitment. And so there's a breakup fee, actually. Like if you break up, without making the 12-month commitment, you work into your contract these disincentives for breaking the contract, which includes like, well, pay me the full amount for the months 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where you were taking the discount, but you never held up to your side of the bargain. It's not a prorated refund. It's like a prorated charge. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So I've just popped the link just to give feedback, and also, of course, where people can get your slides in the chat. So we'd really appreciate for feedback for all of the speakers today, because it helps us decide, who's the best speaker, who's the speaker that we should definitely invite back, and uh,
God, I hope I get invited back.
I tell you what, it's going to be difficult because there are a lot of incredible presentations. There certainly weren't any weak speakers, and it was a wonderful summit. So we really appreciate you putting all this together, Larry. So obviously people can get the slides, people can get the feedback link within that link in the chat there. Obviously, if you want to find out more about Larry, you can just go to mobilemonkey.com. I'm sure a lot of people watching are already Mobile Monkey customers. If you haven't even tried Mobile Monkey, then you've got to sign up and at least try the free plan, because it's just absolutely incredible, and a great tool. As Larry said, if you want to be an agency in this progressive environment, you've got to focus in on areas like Instagram, like chatbots, and Mobile Monkey will give you an opportunity, a piece of technology to be a success in that particular area. Larry, do you have any final thoughts, or
Just wanted to thank everyone for joining us on this marathon. I want to thank our great sponsors and event partners, WordStream, Wishpond, even SVM Rush. Did I miss anyone? Like uh, Virginia? Thank you, Growth Marketing Conference. These are all great brands with great products. I hope you can check them out. And thank you to all speakers, and thank you, David.
And of course, yeah, thank you. And of course, if you haven't done so already, click on the upgrade to all access button below. You'll get access to all the recordings, not just of this summit, but of all previous summits that we've done as well, plus the initial discount for your next upgrade of Mobile Monkey. So you got to do that. It was incredible content, certainly worthwhile watching it again. And if you haven't watched it all, then you absolutely need to do that to catch everything. We're not quite over yet. I'm going to be popping away just for a minute and coming back with the wonderful Virginia Nussey for a final review of the summit. So don't go away. I'll be back in a second. But thanks again, Larry, and we'll see you again sometime.
Thanks, David. Talk to you soon. Thank you. I can. Am I still on? I think I'm still on. Type in a comment, and I will do a dramatic reading of the comment. We had a really great turnout here, like thousands of people, like from around the world. It was really great, great turnout. Thank you all for being part of this. Thank you, Miles, Kathleen, Aaron, Samantha. Wow, so many people. We'll be starting with Virginia and David with their final thoughts in 2 or 3 minutes. Sorry about the delay. Thank you, Kathleen. That's very kind of you. We'll be starting in about a minute, so just hang on. We're just getting Virginia on the line. There were over 50 unicorns in that presentation. A new record. They're saying we'll be on in less than a minute here, so sorry for the delay. Just connecting with Virginia. Let's go. Good to go. Did you guys see this thing with Perez Hilton? I'm just looking at it right now. What is going on? Just asking them what's going on.